Hello Toy Collector fans, Universal Toy Collector here and welcome to the channel. And welcome to another episode of My Collecting Life, the series where I get to speak with you, members of the toy collecting community, about your own personal collections, finding out what got you into collecting in the first place, and what gives you that toy collecting buzz. Okie dokie then, so who is the guest on this week's episode? Well, why don't we find out? You all know the drill by now. Sit yourselves down, make yourselves comfortable, and let's take a look at some of his collection in a musical montage. Okay then, what an absolute fantastic collection. A bit of everything there, and it is absolutely perfectly displayed. It is a pleasure to welcome to the channel for the first time, Mr. Eric Lutes. Hello,
Hey,
sir.
Stu.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm all good. I'm all good. Now, we've spoken before, but I've not. I think it's been a couple of years ago since we've actually properly chatted face to face, and this is the first
Mhm.
time you've been on the channel. So, welcome. I'm delighted to actually get to speak to you. So, how you been keeping, my friend?
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's great to speak to you. Yeah, it has been a long time, I think. So
It
this will be
has. It
nice.
has. I can't remember. We were like sort of discussing, weren't we, just previous to going live?
Mhm.
And yeah, awesome stuff. I'm delighted you're here now. I've got 10 questions for you, Eric, all about you and your
Sure.
collection. One
Certainly.
time, roughly about an hour. If you go
Mhm.
over, it's okay. So, anyway, let's crack on with the first question. What toy lines were you into as a kid, and what are your memories of those toy lines?
So I was all Star Wars and big robots when I was a kid. So it was all
Okay.
about like Voltron and Transor Z and Transformers and GoBots, and of course, like any kid of the '70s, the other half was Star Wars. So it was all the Star Wars, beginning with the vintage line and that start came out in like '78,
Mm,
and going up to all the Jedi toys through like what 85, I think, when they finally kind of killed the
yeah,
line. So
that's it.
yeah, that was all that. And post 85, I think it was mostly Star Wars. I had a little bit of GI Joe. I had a
Yep.
mom that was very much vehemently against anything that was anti-Christian or demonic, as she would say. So I
Okay.
never had really Masters in the Universe toys. I always wanted them, and I watched the show at other kids' houses, but for some odd reason, that was just not okay.
Oh
So
well.
yeah,
That's,
yeah. So
yeah.
hence the Gray Skull is kind of
Base goal.
kind
Yeah.
of yeah, kind of finishing a lifelong kind of ambition when that came out. I was like, wow, I can get that finally.
Is that the Origins version you have there?
It is, yeah, yeah.
It
In
is.
fact,
Yeah.
there's a really funny story about how I got this. It was really funny. We saw it at a toy store here. We have so on the Isle of Man, it's a very small place. It's a population of about
Yep.
85,000. We have essentially three toy stores. We have two Jacks, and we have their entertainer just went in.
Mm,
And they don't get a whole lot. So we were at Jack's before Christmas 2 years ago, I think it was, and they had this Castle Grayskull, and I remarked to my girlfriend, now fiance, I said, "Oh my gosh," I said, "I always wanted that when I was a kid. I can't believe they brought it out again." And she's like, "Oh, you did?" And I said, "Yeah, it's just one of those toys I could never get, and my mom wouldn't buy." And so a couple weeks later, we were back there getting some other presents for somebody, and one of them was gone. They'd had two of them, and one of them was gone. And I said, "Oh man," I said, "Some lucky kid's getting that Castle Grayskull for Christmas." Of course, my fiance didn't say
I
anything.
think I know where this is going. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So on Christmas, I opened it up, and I was like, "I'm the lucky kid." It
Oh,
was
how
great fun.
cool! That's all.
Yeah, it
Do
was
you
really
not
fun.
have a game? Oh, congratulations, by the way.
Mhm.
For now, obviously being engaged and stuff like that. So,
Thank you.
awesome stuff. Well done.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
Do you not have a game in on Isle of Man?
A game. Oh, well, we have the TT race. Is that what you're talking about? The
No,
motorcycle
no, no.
race?
Like the store, the game. Like game, the
Oh,
store.
no, we do have a game. It was its own shop for a while, but now it's kind of mixed in with the not the JD Sports. It's a part of the one of like the sports outdoors
Sports
shops.
Direct.
Sports Direct, that's the one. Yeah. So it's sort of
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
corner of that store now. It used to be its
yeah,
own shop, but I
yeah.
picked up a few things there. Yeah, because they occasionally will have really good deals or clearances on stuff, which is
Mm.
tends to be how I buy stuff now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on
Yeah.
that. I mean, it's just funny because Castle Grayskull they had for like the longest time in
Hmm.
the game in where we live, and I kept on going up there, and it was at reduced price, and I thought, you know what, that's not bad, that's not bad.
Hmm.
And I was had my eye on it for weeks and weeks, and eventually I pulled the trigger for my birthday, so I got some money for my birthday, so I just bought it. So I've actually got it on display now, which is fantastic.
Excellent. I
But
see
then
it behind
about
you.
just oh, it's the mic's in the way. But just after
Mm.
Christmas, they reduced the price even further, and I was like, oh come on, really? But it's
Uh-huh.
just the way it goes. But I find it interesting that it was what was it about Motu then that your mum didn't like?
So it wasn't just Motu. It was she didn't like the first toy she wouldn't let me have was actually the Jumbo Godzilla, part of the Shogun Warriors line. That
Oh
was the
yeah,
first I
okay,
remember she said, like, no, you can't have monsters, no monsters. And sorry about the dog if you can hear that.
that's okay.
The So she wouldn't get me that. And then she wouldn't ever allow me Master of the Universe stuff. I think it was that she took one look at like Skeletor and some of the
Oh okay,
names of the
yeah.
characters and stuff like that. And she was like, "No, I don't want demonic stuff around." And if dog's really going, sorry, I don't know how that's coming through.
It's okay.
Real quick, hold on. We have a very barky dachshund.
That's
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's
yeah.
that's cool.
So the other one line she would never let me even look at was Inhumanoids, I mean, they
Okay.
basically, one of the characters is pretty much Satan, right? So
Yeah. Wow.
so she wouldn't let
Okay.
me any of those. It was anything that looked too scary. And it was kind of
Right.
random, really. It was kind of just weird. She just kind of took a hard line on some things, which you could never really tell if we'd be at a toy store and I'd say, "Oh, can we have this? Can we have this?" And it's like, no, I don't want you
Mm.
having that. So it was a my mom's not a particularly big Bible thumper or anything, but she's a pretty strong kind of Christian, and I
Yeah.
think she would just draw the line kind of semi arbitrarily. I think when we were kids about what she allowed in the house and what wouldn't. She wouldn't allow me Gremlins toy either. That was one of the big ones.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
wanted one of
yeah.
those
Yeah.
large Gremlin toys, and she's like, "No,
Yeah.
forget it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about Transformers then? What was it about Transformers that
Mhm.
that sort of appealed? I mean, I know you said you like big robots and stuff like that.
Mhm. So, it's I think like the engineering of them, and I think that the
Yeah.
storyline I thought was really engaging. But even before like Transformers was on the air, I was really
Mm.
big into the Shogun Warriors. I had a couple of the big jumbos, um, and any of the like the die-cast robots. I just remember always digging it. I don't know if it's the aesthetic or it just kind of appealed to my kind of I don't know, uh, and sensibilities as far as how toys work, and I just
Yeah.
always thought they were just fun to play with, and that kind of
Mm.
thing. I had back when Shogun Wars was really popular towards like the end of the '70s. That Mattel
Yeah.
toy line, they'd rebranded all the Japanese stuff. I also had a friend that used to go back to Japan and visit family all the time, and when he'd go
Okay.
back, I used to have him or more specifically, my mom would say, "Hey, if you find any of these kind of toys, bring them back," and this and that. And one of my favorite toys ever, I actually still have, was one of those little 3POA Ultraman toys that he brought
Okay.
back. And
Mm.
there were a couple things like that, like when I was a kid, like some little small machine robos, but back before like GoBots was even a thing here, he brought some of those back for me, and I was just always into them. I just remember being like really, I don't know, interested by him, I think.
Whatever happened to the GoBots? Because as a kid, I always sort of
Uh-huh.
saw that as cheaper version of
Mhm.
Transformers. I mean, I know they had their own cartoon and stuff like that, their own TV
Mhm.
series and stuff, which I've watched a couple of times. I don't really know too many of the characters, but whatever happened to the GoBots? They sort of just didn't take off quite as well as Transformers did.
Well, I think Hasbro, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure somebody could correct me, Hasbro basically absorbed GoBots as a brand. And I
Okay.
think it was back in the '90s or so. But originally, so GoBots was Machine Robo in Japan. And if you've
Mm.
never seen it, the Machine Robo cartoon is awesome. And it actually
Okay.
comprises quite a few toys that became parts of other brands in the US. But it was awesome. And I think still to this day, if Machine Robo would come out instead of the god awful Hanna-Barbera cartoon, which if you liked it, it's your thing. I never liked to go as a cartoon. I love the toys.
Yeah.
But it would have been bigger than Transformers. The original Machine Robo
Oh.
cartoon's awesome.
So why did that never? So what went wrong there? Why did that not materialize then? Was it just because I'd
So
like
I
to say I
think
don't really know too much about the GoBots or
yeah, I
Japanese
think
world.
GoBots, the toys actually came out before Transformers.
Yeah.
And I think that it was the same sort of thing where they more or less obfuscated a few different toys to become part of it, kind of like Transformers had Diaclone and
Yeah.
Micronaut toys and stuff that they brought over. And I think that the cartoon and the property they built around GoBots just wasn't quite as strong or wasn't quite as popular. I think the show
Mm.
felt a lot less mature, and like I
Yeah.
remember it was a lot more kind of goofy and that kind of thing. And so I think it kind of reflected in the toy lines. The narrative you build and the story you're telling, and that's a big part of what really resonates. And
Mm.
I think as characters, Optimus Prime and Megatron and all those just came off a lot stronger and cooler
Yeah.
Psykill and
Well,
Leader One. So
I
yeah,
think you got a guest.
I do. I have my puppy nose in here. Here. Everybody can say hi to Maggie, the dachshund. This
Oh,
is
bless.
Maggie, the very loud mini dachshund.
Look at that. Look at her.
Yeah.
Bless her. Yeah, my other half's, my wife's mum's got a Dachshund. I think they're lovely little dogs. Bless them.
Yeah, they really are.
Awesome stuff.
They're very loud, very loyal, and
Yeah,
and very
absolute
codependent.
quality. So, what do you think of the movies then, the Transformer movies? Because obviously you had the TV series as a kid, and I thought the first
Mhm,
two seasons of the Transformers G1 versions, what we watched as a kid, I thought they were pretty
mhm,
decent. Then after that, I think from season 3, the quality of the animation started to go downhill. There was, half a Transformer missing in a scene and stuff like that, and just it didn't seem to hold up as well as the first two seasons. And then you've
mhm.
got like all the different incarnations of Transformers with, then you've got Beast Wars, all those kind of things. I was never into Beast Wars as a kid.
No,
And then
yeah.
you had the Michael Bay movies, and now you've got the War for Cybertron, which personally I thought that was brilliant. I thought the animation was fantastic, the storyline was great. I understand the fact that you didn't have the original voice characters voicing these characters, but they can't go on forever.
Mhm.
I like that. What are your thoughts about all the different properties within Transformers?
So I think there are some of the later cartoons and animated shows that I think what I've seen of them have been pretty good. I admittedly have not watched a whole lot. The whole War for Cybertron series is actually kind of on my list of things I need to catch up with. But
Yeah.
I think there've been legitimately some pretty good cartoons. I think what was the Transformers animated one, the one that went very stylized. I can't remember what the name of it was now, but it was
Oh, I
like a
wouldn't
really
know.
good show, and it had some really good
Yeah.
nods to the G1 stuff. My interest in Transformers kind of I don't know, plateaued, and you might say kind of ended right around the time of the movie. I think when the movie came out, I was in fifth, maybe sixth grade. It was kind of the
Okay.
tail end
Yeah.
of when I was really into that kind
Mm.
of stuff and toys and stuff. And I remember, like, I loved the movie when it came out. We saw it in a theater, and like a little theater in the Sunrise Mall when we were kids, and my friend Ty Morris and we were blown away. And I remember, like, afterwards, even the soundtrack, we were like, "Oh, this is great!" And like going straight over to the Sam Goody and picking up the soundtrack, and
Yeah.
on vinyl, and God, I wish I still had that. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of more or less out of that stuff until I would say kind of the tail end of the 90s, when some of the stuff kind of
Yeah.
started reemerging. I was never into Beast Wars. I remember seeing it on TV, and it's cool. And I think there are a lot of people that grew up with Beast Wars that have really fond
Yeah.
memories of it. Never quite hit the same chords with me. Um, I think they started when it came back around to the Machine Wars stuff. I was got vaguely sort of semi interested again, but
Yeah.
till they brought out the car robot stuff, and the latter part of the stuff that was coming over from Japan. I think that started getting interesting again, but I wasn't really collecting a whole lot then at that point either.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a weird thing. I was at uni from, like, 98 to like 2002-ish, and in that time I mean, I was totally absorbed. I didn't collect. I didn't even really watch TV during that time. So
Okay.
so it was
No, fair
yeah,
enough.
so yeah, I missed. There was a lot of that stuff, even like the later series, the 2000X Masters of the Universe stuff. I never saw any of that for the
Mm.
longest time. I think I've seen a couple episodes now. But yeah, there was just a time where I just kind of fell out of all of that, to be honest with
Yeah. No, no, no. Fair
you. Mhm.
enough. Um, what was your favorite toy line as a kid and why? So obviously you said you were heavily
Mm.
into Transformers and Star
Uh-huh.
Wars, or did it sort of change as you sort of like got older?
So my absolute favorite toys when I was a kid, the easy answer is Star Wars, and I love Star Wars. But the real answer is actually like the old Godaiken robots, the Bandai
Okay.
Godaikens that they brought over. Yeah, the big die-cast ones. I had
Right.
one of those that my parents brought back from Japan when they'd made a trip over there, and I think it was 80, 82, maybe 83. And that was my all-time favorite toy. I actually reacquired it fairly recently and kind of
Mm.
restored one kind of back into shape. Um, uh, they're they're exceedingly rare. The original Godaiken ones, I think I actually have a knockoff that I kind of made look like a real one. But yeah, that was hands down. I thought those are the coolest things. And they had all those robots. Like, originally, Voltron was part of that line.
Yeah.
They called him Go Lion, and Tetsujin 28, and they had all these Daimos and all these old lines that they kind of brought into that one kind of line that they brought out here. And I think even then they were kind of very premium toys. I think even if you used to find them at like Toys R Us, they had that the Godaiken label that they brought over, and those were I think pretty pricey even then. Those I remember those weren't very cheap toys, but still to this day, it's like if I was going to tell you like something like, oh, what would you like to reacquire? It would cost a fortune, but I'd love to get all those old Godaiken robots.
Yeah. So why is it that they're so hard to get now? Why is it that they're so hard to get? What is it?
Well, I think partly is that I don't think they were very common to begin with. Not a whole lot of kids had a whole lot of them. But I think also there's a factor that they're not the most durable toys. It's like they've got a lot of fragile parts that get lost or come off, or so finding them in like a complete kind of shape is really rare. And I think there's also still kind of a demand for those. So I think it's pretty hard to find them in good shape. You can find pieces like when I put together a like a Go Lion / Voltron / Lionbot, whatever you want to call them, a few years ago, basically from parts. And I pretty much fully restored it. I think it's in some of the pictures that I've got in my collection. But it was tough because one of the things I found, so I went through this period. I have to back up. I went through this period where I was essentially restoring old toys, and I was basically Frankensteining from multiple broken pieces. Like I put together a vintage sound wave from like 3 different sound waves. Like I've managed to find one with like the working cassette door mechanism but broken legs, and then to find one with intact legs and one with intact arms, and sort of take it apart and put them all back together into one that works. So I started doing that with some of those Japanese robots. I did that with the Lionbot, and then the Guardian figure, the other Godaiken bot I have. And what I found was that I was finding multiple pieces, but they weren't necessarily from the same like release. Like one was from Lionbot, one was from a Godaiken one, and they didn't actually all match. So it actually took a lot of kind of engineering and getting them to work together and replacing parts and dremeling bits out and that kind of thing. And I was kind of surprised because I figured that those were all produced from like the same tooling, and they really aren't. But I got one together that looks pretty decent on the shelf. That's an old like vintage style Voltron / Go Lion. So
would you say then when you're restoring stuff and figures, would you say that you're a purist and it has to be exactly the same, or you quite happy to get parts from and then just?
I think as long as it looks right, I think as long as it looks right, I'm okay with it. Like, one of my other ones that I put together and it's on the shelf up here. Cup was always actually one of my favorite Transformers from when I was a kid. I just thought he was cool. I liked the character, and so I found a Cup, and I kind of did the same thing. I fixed him up from a couple broken ones, and I that did the whole repro labels thing and patched them up, and it was really about just making them look, more or less fresh. That was so however I could kind of manage to do that. I also had a side swipe and a Trax, and I did a Starscream. I'm just looking at my shelf right now to see which ones. I did a Hound. Hound is the really tough one. Some of those Diaclone like Hound and Mirage have lots of really fragile little parts that are always broken, like the waist on Mirage, that's never intact. So like replacing that and fixing it with like a little screw and that kind of stuff. So as long as in the end it looks and more or less feels like it did, when it came out of the box, I'm pretty happy with it.
Awesome. When did you stop playing with your toys and become a collector?
So like I said, I think I was in about 6th grade. In fact, I can tell you the moment I stopped getting toys for my birthday is I think I want to say it was 6th grade, so I would have been 11 or maybe 12. And I remember my mom had gotten me my birthday present already, like, and she had gotten me Metroplex or something, and I said, I was telling her, I really like a new skateboard for my birthday, I think, and she said, well, I already got you a present, and I said, well. And she said, well, do you want to know what it is? Do you, if you want me to take it back, we can take it back and get you something else. And I said, yeah. And she's like, well, I got you the Metroplex you said you'd wanted for Christmas. And I said, oh. And I said, yeah, it's cool, but I don't think I'm going to play with that anymore. And so I remember that as kind of the last time that I'd really gotten
That's quite an
toys
early
for
age, isn't it?
ish. Yeah. I think it was like 5th grade is when I started discovering things like girls and skateboards. And I think
Okay.
by 6th grade, I'd kind of fully transitioned out of playing with toys, you know? So yeah, it was, so I didn't really touch toys again through the 90s until they brought out, well, actually, I guess it really wasn't that long. It was about 8 years until they brought out the, Power of the Force 2 stuff with like when they started bringing
Okay.
out Star
Yeah.
Wars figures again. And I think
Mm.
that was the next time that I went into a toy store and actually with the purpose of buying a toy. so
Wow.
and I think everybody was buying those things. I remember there was a little bit of a craze around those when those came out.
Well, there was. I mean, it was,
Mhm,
it was 10 plus years since we'd seen anything Star Wars
mhm,
like action figure in the shops anyway. When you
mhm,
first saw those figures, then, I mean, I speak from my own experience. I've mentioned this a few times. I was so excited to actually see that they were going to be doing more Star Wars figures because back in the day, obviously, you didn't have the internet, so you couldn't browse the web or anything like that.
mhm.
You had to go to a comic store. They had these like
Yeah.
magazines, and you look through the back and see what was coming out. I was like, oh wow! But then when I saw them, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, they don't look like the Star Wars figures we had. I know the
Mhm.
modern day versions. The card backs I didn't think were great at the time. I can appreciate them now. I just wondered what your thoughts were because they were quite jacked, weren't they? Some of those figures
Yeah,
early
yeah.
days.
The first line was ridiculous. I mean, everybody jokes about Hulkamania Luke and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I just remember thinking it was cool that they were bringing the figures out, and I think that
yeah.
they really kind of matched the kind of aesthetic that toys tended to have then.
Mm.
So I don't remember it being. I think the only thing I was actually really kind of turned off by was there was always the joke about monkey face Leia. The first Princess Leia
Yeah,
figure, just the face was
yeah,
horrendous.
yeah.
It was a long time before they got Carrie Fisher's likeness right.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
crikey, yeah. Bless her.
yeah. Yeah, I don't remember being put off by him at all.
Mm.
I just thought it was cool that they were coming out again. So I think at the time I was thinking like, oh, they'll bring these out for a couple years and that'll be it. It was just when they reissued Star Wars, and I was thinking like, yeah, they'll bring some new toys out maybe when the prequels come out. And at that time, prequels were still like 5 or 6 years away.
Mm.
And so I picked those up, and that was really about it. And then they kind of brought more out, so I bought those, and then they brought more out, and I was
Yeah.
like, wow, they're really going with these things. And then there was the craze where everyone was trying to get the Slave Leia figure,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that was the hard one to find. Actually, I guess a funny story about that one. That one, I made friends with this girl that worked at FAO Schwartz that was in the mall, and actually, I got a date out of it. I got the
Oh.
figure. And I said, well, you got to let me thank you. I said, let me take you out to dinner or something like that. So we ended up dating for a while. So the
Oh,
Slave
awesome.
Leia action figure
Wow.
was a gateway to a girlfriend. So that was kind of
that's
nice.
that's awesome. So great stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff. I mean, the good thing about that line, I know, like you said, we've mocked the size and stuff
Hmm.
like that, but they did big figures out that you didn't get in the original Kenner version,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
thought was pretty cool. I mean, they gave names to people like what's his name, Walrus Man, like Ponda Barbara,
Hmm.
and all that sort of stuff. It and it makes you wonder why they didn't do that with the recent Star Wars retro collection that they're doing.
Yeah, that's a big question. I know there's a lot of people that almost sounds like took offense to those. I think they're great. I was so happy
Yeah.
when I started seeing those. And they look. I've got a bunch of them displayed. I this year my kind of collecting goal was to get a bunch of the old vintage figures and recollect a lot of the
Mm.
ones that I'd had and stuff. And so I'm kind of in the process of that. And even some of the newer ones they brought out from the newer series, I think are pretty cool. They look like what might have come out had the line lasted another 5 years or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
I don't find the quality issues that other people seem to be feeling about those. I don't really notice anything particularly deficient with those. It's like, okay, so a couple figures have a hard time holding their weapons. It's not okay. The figures themselves, the quality is basically there. It's like, I've been recollecting a lot of the old vintage figures. So there's a couple that I've like been able to compare them like hand in hand, and they don't
Yeah.
really look or feel all that different. Maybe a little tiny bit. Stan Solo, of course, you know, that's a big thing now. And I've actually got a couple of his figures. I picked up his yak face that I'm staring at right now and the blue snaggletooth. And that was basically because it's like, I'll never find those for any approachable price, right?
No,
so I was
no,
actually
absolutely
happy
not.
that he brought those out.
Yeah.
My thing is, if they're on the shelf and they look right, and it looks like I've got a full collection of Kenner figures, I'm pretty happy.
Oh,
You know?
absolutely. Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
yeah.
I was gonna say I'm with you. I
Mhm,
don't mind Stan Solo. I've got the Ula
mhm,
rather. I've got the Stormtrooper Luke, and I've got the blue Snaggletooth.
mhm,
I did get the Yak Face and the Amanaman
mhm.
original Kenner, and
Yeah.
and that was before I started my channel. So that was a good. I think that must have been around 2020,
Mhm.
and you know they cost a pretty penny then. And the thing is
Yeah.
with that, I'm not 100% sure they've got their weapons, but I don't know. I
Mhm.
mean, they could be
They
in
could be.
production
Yeah.
weapons for all I know. Do you know what I mean? I'm not an expert on that kind of thing, so that's the thing, isn't it?
It's hard to tell. I do understand where people kind of get a little tweaked about the repro and basically that it's kind of it's making it
Devaluing.
harder. Yeah, it's devaluing possibly the original stuff. And you know, I'm in the end, these are pieces of plastic and it's what it means to
Yeah,
you. And you know,
absolutely,
if you know,
absolutely.
so it's like I get it, and I understand that people want to have an original Kenner toy and know that they've got original Kenner parts with it and everything. And so I do understand where they're coming from. It's not as big of an issue with me. I think, like I said, as long as I feel like it looks like I've got a original Kenner collection, I'm pretty happy with
Mm.
that. So
I
yeah.
mean, now, I mean, some of the weapons and the accessories
Hmm.
for the figures themselves, the original Kenner figures, I mean, they're
Hmm.
going for an absolute fortune. And
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
I mean, the people that are doing these repros now, they're doing such a good job.
Hmm.
How do you know that you're not buying a repro?
Yeah,
How do you
that's
know
the
it's the
thing.
original? That's the thing. I mean,
Hmm.
you know, like say for example, you could spend 80 quid or something like that on a staff for a
Hmm.
Manaman. How do you know it's? You just don't know, do you? Do you know what
It's
I mean?
true. And you know, and it's even back in the day, it's like, I mean, I remember back in the 80s that you used to see like knockoff transformers, like really good looking ones,
Yeah.
all the time. In fact, you know, a friend of mine, he knew this shop in LA where he grew up that they carried a whole bunch of them, and most of his transformers were essentially
Mm,
knockoffs, and you really couldn't tell. And you
yeah.
know, so that stuff always kind of existed. I do think I think for serious collectors that are really after knowing that they've got vintage stuff, I totally understand where they're coming from because it's probably really annoying. But apparently there's various little ways to tell whether or not the weapons float or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you know, in the end of the day, when I look at them, I really don't care as long as they look nice on the shelf. I'm like whatever. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's the same
mhm,
with the vintage collection, isn't it? TVC. You
mhm,
had that first issue Ahsoka in
yeah.
1.0, and that was going for silly money on the secondary market. You know,
Mhm.
I looked at one, wasn't thinking of getting it. I was just interested to see the price, and that was going over for over 600 quid. And then,
Yeah.
of course,
Mhm.
later on in the year, they re-released her in 2.0. So, of course,
Mhm.
that automatically then starts knocking the value down for the
Yeah.
so it's no real difference, is there? You know, between Hasbro devaluing a Star Wars figure or a third party that's doing a repro weapon. It's no real
Yeah, I
difference,
mean,
is it?
essentially, yeah, because like even with the vintage collection, they're coming out with stuff now that, like, you
Mm.
know, I mean, it's essentially they're knocking off themselves, right? So it's
Yeah,
you'll have that same issue where I'm sure that there are probably vintage collections everywhere that were missing, you know, a Han Solo gun or something like that that have got
yeah,
it now thanks to the vintage collection. So, um,
mm,
you know, I'm like I said, in the end, how I look at it, it's what you like, and they're pieces of plastic, and you know. Such is life.
absolutely. Definitely. What is your most prized piece in your collection, or do you have a sentimental piece in your collection? You can have one of
Oh,
each.
that's a tough one. Wow. Um, Most prized. Probably, mm, I would say my original kind of vintage Tomy Tron figures.
Okay.
I have three of mine. I'm missing the the Guard, which I got as part of the NECA line, because I
Yeah.
totally coveted those when I was a kid. And it wasn't until actually fairly recently that I got the original ones. I had the NECA ones, but the NECA re-released versions of those that came out like 8 years ago or something like that, they didn't quite feel the same. I had a Tron Light Cycle when I was a kid that I'd traded for my Mirage Transformer toy.
Okay.
So I never saw those in stores. I saw those like one. I was huge into Tron when I was a kid, and I saw them in stores like once. And I was with my dad, who like flatly he had never bought anything for me. He flatly refused to buy them, and I was like, please, please, I'll mow the lawns, I'll do anything. He's like, no, you're not getting that. No, I'm not buying you a toy. You don't need that. You don't need that. So I got a bunch of those, and I was pretty proud of it. So I really like seeing those because I wanted those so bad when I was a kid. I'm trying to think what else is I mean, I have a few things that I'm really am happy I got. Lately, I think the one, and I'm just kind of looking down. I've nowadays I tend to not buy a whole bunch of small stuff. I'll buy like a really nice thing now and then. Like I bought a whole bunch of the Chogokin, the Bandai Chogokin toys. So I have like a God Mars. I had always wanted the God Mars when I was a kid. The original Bandai released but the Solar Chogokin one, I've got that. That's really good. I also ended up getting the Solar Chogokin Vehicle Voltron, the Dairugger, which I always wanted. I never had the original either. So I'd always wanted that. But I would say that's a tough one because there's a lot in here, and I'm honestly just kind of looking around at something that stands out. There's a lot that I'd wanted like for a long time that I'd kind of hunted down, but it's hard to pick just one. Yeah. I would say those are probably the ones that stick out, I think. Yeah.
What about sentimental? Have you got a sentimental piece? I mean, do you have any of your like childhood toys?
I do. I've got 3.
Yeah.
I've got a Gumby and Pokey that I loved from when I was a kid. I loved Gumby when I was a wee little kid. And then I've got that 3POA vinyl Ultraman. And I was like, Ultraman is another thing I was huge into when I was a kid. I only ever had like two Ultraman toys. I've got a few more now. Thanks to a really good friend that mailed me some of the Mego ones that they'd done, and I have like one of those nice like SH Figure Arts Ultraman and that kind of thing. I always loved that character. Loved the show. A few things like that.
Awesome. I mean, I've just recently got some Motu figures that were found up in the loft.
Oh, cool. Oh, nice.
They were
your original ones?
Just my original ones, yeah.
Oh,
I've always said for the longest time that I regret not having any of my childhood toys. And I got a message from my dad saying he was down the tip and he showed me the pictures. He goes, "I've just found these in the box. I was just about to throw it out." I was like, "Oh, bloody hell!" You know, I'm glad you looked. He was literally you would have thrown it if you hadn't looked. You would have thrown it. And I've cleaned them up. I've restored them. The legs were broken, so I've put the new bands in. I'm over the moon, Eric. I'm absolutely delighted to have those figures in my collection. And to be fair,
that's cool. That's like the story I always hear about
as well.
Yeah. That's like the story I always hear about finding stuff in the attic somewhere. It's like, oh my gosh, you know.
Yeah. See, I've always heard those stories. I mean, I remember I was talking to I've talked to loads of people how they've come across these like fantastic items from their childhood and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, it's just well, I really regret it. And I can look around my toys and think, oh yeah, these are great. But now I'm just like, yeah, I've got original Motu figures from my childhood. That is awesome.
That's cool.
What toy lines? Oh no, hang on a minute. Whoa. I'm skipping there. Do you have a grail piece that you would really want in your collection? You wouldn't mind spending a bit of money on?
Actually, yes. There's 2. And one is the Jumbo Godzilla, the Shogun Warriors Godzilla. And then the other is a vintage Dairugger, the vintage vehicle Voltron. And I keep piecing it together by parts, but I'm kind of afraid it'd be the same situation where if they weren't the same releases, they wouldn't fit very well together. But
Yeah.
those two, I kind of have my eye out for. Those are, I actually saw at a toy store in Florida, at the Bearhaven toy store, vintage toy store. There's actually a video of it on Michael Mercy's channel, but they had
Okay.
the Jumbo Godzilla, and it was $800, and it
Oh
was
wow.
just ever so expensive, too expensive
Yeah.
for me to
Yeah.
buy. If I ever found one for like 400 or 500, I'd be thinking about it. Even if it took a little bit of restoring work. But the other
Yeah.
consideration is it's gigantic, and I was like, how am I going to get this thing home? so,
It'll cost some shipping as well. I can tell you if you
yeah,
ship
yeah,
it.
it's not cheap.
Let me know. Yeah. Is
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
one? The Shogun one? Is that the Godzilla? Is that the one Goji's got?
I think so. I'm pretty sure he's got that
Yeah.
one. Yeah, they actually came out
Yeah.
with like a miniature version. I think Super
Oh,
7 came
okay.
out with like a miniature line. And I
Yeah.
kept looking at that, but I really want that big one. It's got. I mean, it looks so good back here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There was one toy line I was never into, Godzilla or
Uh-huh.
franchise. If I'm honest with you, I have no idea why. I don't. It just
Yeah.
never sort of like I can appreciate it, but it was just something that I've never sort of like really been into.
Well, it's sort of for me like the gray skull back here.
Yeah.
It was sort of like represents forbidden fruit. So, so I wasn't
Yeah, well,
allowed
that's
them.
understandable. That's a whole different kettle of fish, that isn't it?
Yeah,
Are
yeah,
you going
yeah.
to be getting the Snake Mountain when it comes out? Origin Snake Mountain?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
No.
That wasn't one I really wanted when I was a kid. I'm really happy it's coming out. I'm really glad that collectors have the chance to get that sort of stuff that they love. If I was going to get another playset, if they pulled something kind of magical and decided to like re-release the Death Star playset or something like that as part of like the retro
Ooh,
collection, I'd probably
yeah,
think about that one. But
yeah.
there's like I
Wow.
can't imagine. I love Ghostbusters, but I don't think I'd buy like a Ghostbusters playset or anything like that. There's just not too much of that. I think I'd feel like I'd really want to display all that much.
I'm surprised Hasbro haven't gone down that route.
Yeah, there's a few things like they re-released effectively a lot of the vehicles through the Power of the Force 2, like, with the
Yeah,
additional electronics and stuff, and there was a lot
yeah.
of that stuff, and it was actually kind of better than some of the original stuff. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that they haven't gone full bore and just done like vintage re-released vehicles. It'd be cool to like get an
Mm,
old style like white X-wing and stuff like that. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Mm.
yeah. Interesting stuff. Um, what toy lines are you currently collecting?
So the only toys I actively collect now, I will buy like when I see Neutron stuff that's cool. Like I'll probably try to flesh out the collection of the Tron toys that are available only at Disney right now. I've got a couple of them,
Yeah.
the vintage style stuff. Um, I collect masterpiece transformers that are part of the original line. So right now, I've got most of them, I think, except for like Trailbreaker, that were part of the original line of Autobots.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I some of them are third party, like they don't make a Mirage. So I got a third party Mirage and Jazz.
Yeah.
So I want to have a complete roster of the original Autobots in
Oh
masterpiece
wow.
form. And I'm about 75-80% there. I don't have any of the
Awesome.
mini bots. The third party masterpiece mini bots aren't. I don't think they're part of the plan.
No.
But I do that. If I see cool Optimus Primes, I'll get that. I used to collect basically every single Optimus Prime, and it's like slash convoy I could find.
Mm.
Um, I thinned out the collection though, because the ones I determined I liked are ones that are truck form mostly, and that kind of have the original kind of color scheme. And like I had stuff like Leo Convoy and stuff for a while, and it was like, it's not really, like I kept the big convoy, the one that turns into like the Mastodon, because I think that one looks really
Okay.
cool. But I thinned out that Prime collection, and I've still got a lot. When I see good ones that come out, I'll pick them up. And then really the vintage Star Wars stuff is the only other thing I'm buying right now. So
Mm.
it's I just bought a couple more on eBay that I found for a really good deal. And
Okay.
so my plan is after I get the line out, I might kind of get in there with some enamel paints and kind of touch them up here and there and kind of make them look
Yeah.
spiffy.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. Those Transformers, I can't remember the name of the company, but they're like it's like they're like Hot Toys. and they did a Soundwave, and there was a Bumblebee, and I saw them over at Universal Studios last year.
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
30 DLX, something like that?
One of those. Yeah. It's like the
Yeah.
non-transforming, really detailed ones.
Yeah. They
Hmm.
look absolutely awesome. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that would look fantastic in my display. But yeah,
Hmm.
no, no,
Yeah.
a
Those
bit too
are
much there.
pretty awesome. There's one.
Yeah.
There's a company. I can't remember the name of it now. It's one of those companies that does a like the you get like a package of parts every week, and
Okay.
they're doing
Oh,
an Optimus
yeah.
Prime that's
Oh,
like
okay.
4 feet tall or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Not
I want to
Diagostini,
do
is
one.
it? Is it Diagostini?
It might be, yeah. And it's like the fingers all move and it lights up and all this crazy
Really?
stuff.
Ah, how
And it was
cool.
I think I looked at it and I really wanted to do it, but it's like it's like gigantic,
Yeah.
and then B, it's like, God, do I really want to spend $2,400 or some damn thing over 3 years to try to do this? And I'm
Yeah.
the kind with kits and stuff. I build lots of model kits and do lots of hobby and stuff. And I like to do it and I like to have it done. It's like having parts sitting around for 3 years. I'm driving crazy. So,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I
yeah.
did the build the Falcon because yeah, Giagostini
Oh,
did the build the
cool.
Falcon, and that took 2
Uh-huh.
years, and I really like that, and that was like in the displayed on the living room table, sort
Oh,
of like
that's awesome. That had
on
to
the
have been
coffee
rewarding
table.
when you finished that.
It was
Uh-huh.
awesome. It was really
Mhm.
good. It had the working ramps, the lights, and everything like that, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I just thought, you know what, this doesn't really sort of fit in with my collection. Although I
Mhm.
like Star Wars, everything was like sort of like Hasbro. I had I got the sail barge. That was like again the vintage collection, and then I had the the Razor Crest on the way, and I just thought I've got nowhere to put it. I've got nowhere to put it. So in the end, I
Oh.
ended up selling the Falcon,
Uh-huh.
which was a shame. But then I was going to start getting the build the Enterprise as well, and then I got I
Mm.
think 10 issues into that, and I just thought no chance. This thing is massive. There's nowhere to put it. So I just
Mhm.
we sold the little bits that I did have the
Oh,
10 issues.
cool.
But yeah, but
Well, the neat thing
it
about
works
those
out a lot
though
of
is
money, doesn't it?
they've got a really big secondary market. Like I was looking around and I thought, you know what, even if you couldn't get some of the parts, if you started a new one and you missed out on something or anything like that,
Yeah.
that I've seen a lot of those. I think it's like a really interesting kind of niche of model making that people get into. It's really cool.
It is. The thing is, I don't have the time or the patience
Hmm.
to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I got my dad the build the Bismarck, and that is
Oh, neat.
huge.
Uh-huh.
Working guns, cranes, and the and things like that, lights and sounds, and it was absolutely awesome. But every time he got an issue or few issues come through at the
Hmm.
end of the month, he would sit there
Yeah.
and build it, and then he would message me, "This bloody thing is so infuriating. Look at this little." And he's getting on, bless him, and he's got these like fiddly little wires that he's or ropes he's got to like sort of
Uh-huh.
thread through and stuff like that. And he said the pieces were so small, and he said he'd cut into it, and a piece would ping across the floor, and he'd like, "Oh, for God's sake!" And it's just,
That's the
yeah. So
worst.
I said to him, I said, "Look, I said I bought this for you because I thought you said, I thought you might have
Hmm.
enjoyed it. Oh, I am
Yeah.
enjoying it. Doesn't sound like it to me, Dad, but he's done it now, so bless him."
That's awesome.
Moving on, if you could now only collect just one toy line,
Hmm.
what would it be and why?
Oh.
So you had
Hmm.
the options of all the toy lines that you currently collect.
Um, oh, that's a hard one. Probably I'd keep collecting vintage Star Wars stuff,
Yeah,
and just to fill it out. I kind of decided this year, I'd kind of make that my really only thing I was actively kind of collecting or trying to find, with the goal of um collecting the entire original, what is it, 94 figures or something like that. And there's some really hard ones
yeah,
to find. There's like the
yeah.
whole last 17 and all that sort of stuff. And if stretch goals being the Ewoks and droids figures, maybe. But I think it's highly unlikely I'll find any of those in any sort of either shape, or maybe if somebody like a Stan Solo kind of guy, does some repros of them, or maybe possibly Kenner themselves. You never know.
Mm,
But yeah, that would be a lot of fun. It's just, I think of all the stuff. It's like I've got I've got all the kind of Transformers and stuff. I mean, if I couldn't get any more of those, I've got plenty of those to enjoy. It would be fun to continue and get all the rest of the Star Wars figures, though.
mm. Do you find it easy to stay focused when you're collecting, or do you
I do
sort of like,
now.
You do now, yeah?
I think there was a time when I was like just buying a bunch of stuff, like when I was really kind of getting into it, and I bought all sorts of weird things like Lost in Space figures and Starship Troopers and all
Mm,
the sort of stuff. I think there's kind of a point sometimes when you're buying and when you start figuring out I'm just buying just to buy stuff. And
yeah,
so that's kind of I don't do that anymore.
yeah,
I kind of like I said, there's a couple things like I'll get a masterpiece transform if it's part of the original line because with the goal
mm,
of getting all those. And the vintage Star Wars stuff and the retro
yeah,
collections become part of that because it's essentially the same thing.
yeah,
But there's not really a whole lot that I feel like I need, So
yeah.
there's nothing I feel like, oh, I need that. I when I find cool Spider-Man figures, I've been buying the like the intro into the Spider-Verse Spider-Man movie,
Okay, yeah,
which the new one's
yeah,
out either out or out soon. It's not playing here yet.
yeah,
Um, but I really liked that movie. So as they're bringing out the 6-inch Hasbro figures of those, I've been buying up those as I see them. And they
mm,
brought out some cool ones, like they brought out the Japanese Spider-Man, the Spider-Man, and stuff like that. That I'll kind of add to sort of like my own little Spider-Man collection because Spider-Man is like one of my all-time favorite characters. So,
okay.
I was always into Spider-Man even when I was a kid, which I think you may have a picture of proof of
Yeah,
that I
yeah, yeah,
sent you. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Talking of
So,
your pictures, I'm
uh-huh,
going to say a lot of them are going to be in the intro, but
sure.
then the ones that I can't fit in the intro, then I will put
Hmm.
in the outro. So yeah, but I've got that one of you
Cool.
in the Spider-Man. Yeah. um, would you consider starting a toy collector YouTube channel?
Uh, Probably not because
No.
I don't think I'm enough into collecting now to probably do it justice. What I would start, and actually I've filmed a whole bunch of them. I just never had time to cut them and put them up. Is I've been doing hobbyist stuff for a long time, and like usually when I do a new model kit, I film myself doing it, and I've always meant
Okay.
to start cutting that stuff. I have a good 7 or 8 episodes worth of stuff that I've filmed that I just haven't had time to edit and put up. I think
Mm.
eventually I'll probably put that stuff up. That's kind of been in the like a hobbyist crafting sort of channel has kind of
Yeah,
been in
I
my
mean,
mind for a
okay,
long time.
okay. So
Uh-huh,
I didn't phrase that very well. Toy collecting,
uh-huh.
or hobbies. I mean, if
Yeah, yeah,
you'd be quite, yeah, yeah,
yeah. That'll appear someday. I'll
yeah.
surprise you guys someday with a hey, here's 10
Awesome.
episodes,
No, no, no.
and
And
then
if you're
you'll
like, where did
probably
this
not
come
see
from? Yeah,
anything
yeah.
for another 2 years.
Oh dear. Is it just a matter of like time consuming, or it's just something that you don't feel that you, I'd say, contribute to, but you don't feel that you'd have enough material to do a toy collector YouTube channel? Or
It's really a time thing because like
yeah,
even now, like most of my spare time has been working on the house,
yeah,
that we moved into, and I work a lot. I'm usually working fairly late, and last year was particularly stressful. I had 2 different contract jobs. I was kind of consulting on the evening, so I just had zero time to dedicate to any of that stuff. So
yeah.
so yeah, it's really been a time issue, but this year it's kind of since a couple of those contract things have ended, I've said like, you know what, I'm putting the brakes on too much extracurricular stuff, and I'm going to
Yeah.
start concentrating on some stuff that's fun. So hopefully we'll start seeing some of that. But
Okay.
that's the
Awesome.
thing. I really respect like people like you that are creators that have day jobs and stuff because it takes a lot of time and organization and stuff to do. So I don't know how you guys do it, frankly.
I mean,
So
to be,
no,
I
I
mean,
really respect that.
to be, I'm fairly lucky with the job I have.
Hmm.
It's shift work. So
Hmm.
one week I'm on late, and the next week I'm on early. So I if I start on a late, then I don't need to be at work until, I don't know, I get there for about 2 o'clock. So I've got all that time in the morning to sort of like do a video and then
Hmm.
put it together. And then when I get home, I finish at quarter to two. So by the time I'm home, about 20 past 2, I've got all that time again the whole afternoon and early evening to get something prepped. But yeah, it is time consuming, and I take my hat off to anybody who's got a YouTube channel, no matter what they're sort of like doing, like content wise. It does take a lot of time, and it can be
Hmm.
frustrating at times. Sometimes I do get frustrated because if I'm like doing I never script mine,
Hmm.
so I find it really difficult sometimes to like get it together, and I say something and I don't sound right, so I do about 5 or 6, 7 takes just on
Hmm.
one little bit, so I get it to sound right. So that can be frustrating. Anyhow, what gives you that toy collecting buzz?
You know what does? I was imagining you're going to ask me this, and so I was actually thinking about this before. Um, what gives me a buzz is when I find something I want for a really good price. Like if I
Yeah,
find a
yeah,
vintage Star Wars figure for like nine quid that I really wanted, I'm like, oh yes, yes, buy it, buy it, buy it.
yeah.
That's or something really unexpected. Like I'll
Mm.
give you a good for instance. So I found the one of the Optimus Prime, the newer versions of the Optimus Prime, one of the uh, forget what the line is now. Maybe War for Cybertron or something. I found it
Okay.
at a TK Maxx for like 10 quid. And I was like,
Okay.
it's like that's the kind of thing that if I find something for a really good deal, like way below
Mm,
retail, I get excited. That's when I get really thrilled. Nowadays, there's a
mm.
lot of things like even the Black Series. There's a bunch of really good ones, but when I see them in stores and they're like 32 quid, I'm just like, you know
You
what?
just walk away, don't it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's I'm not gonna spend that much money. But like, I found a couple like we were in Liverpool like 3 weekends ago. It's actually where we got
Okay.
COVID the second time. Um, but we were there and we went into the entertainer and they had like 3 or 4 retro collection figures for the newer lines like Obi-Wan and stuff
Yeah,
like that. And I
yeah,
hadn't really planned on getting them, but they were like for like 7 each. And I was like, wow, that's actually a good deal. So I picked those
yeah.
up and things like that. Like getting a deal now is what gets me the most excited.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I used to bloody jump all over
Hmm.
the pre-orders and get it because my thinking was if I don't get it now, then it would go on the
Hmm.
secondary market and I'll be paying even more for it. So I might as well pay retail price.
Hmm.
And then with the pre-orders, everything sort of like came at once. So they're saying that, oh yeah, it would be this month, this month, this month. So it'd be like
Hmm.
2 or 3 months apart, but it all came together. And it's like, oh, it's come early. And I was like, brilliant. Okay. So that kind of like played into my budget a bit. So I've practically stopped doing the pre-orders. But
Yeah.
even now, if you see something for like coming out at 25 quid, a few months later you'll see it on reduced price on the same website, or you'll see it in
Hmm.
store a few months later for like an even more reduced price. It's just like I'm just waiting
Yeah.
for those now. It's
Well, and I've found a few things at like a TK Maxx kind of places for deep discounts that I've been
yeah,
shocked about like seeing, and so it's when I see that, I get pretty amped. That's when I get really excited. Or even like like Entertainer sometimes will have fairly deep discounts on stuff that's been sitting there a while. And there were times where I
yeah.
found some Black Series figures that I didn't have that were going for like 7 quid or 8 quid. And I was like, you know what? That's when I'll buy
Yeah,
that.
decent
So.
pricing.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Right, we're coming up to the top of the hour. I've got one more question for you.
Mhm.
What does your collection mean to you?
Oh, you know what? It means good memories and nostalgia and a significant investment. so, no, you know what I try nowadays. It kind of goes back to what I was telling you. I try to only buy things or have things around that kind of mean something to some degree. Like
Yeah,
I picked up a bunch of the Motu Origins figures because I always wanted them when I was a kid, and they're
yeah,
great and they're super colorful. I'm looking on right now. They're in a case on the wall. They're
yeah,
they're really colorful and look just awesome, and they're they look pretty much just like the original 80s toys. In some cases better, I think. And the vintage Star Wars stuff, it's just like, hey, that's just good stuff. And, you look around the room and you kind of enjoy
mm,
what you're looking at. And it's like I think with anything, it's like any collector, there's if you're not getting some joy out of it, you're doing it wrong. If you're just irritated with everything, it's like and you could say the same thing with like sports memorabilia collectors. It's like, they
yeah,
have this stuff and they're looking around because they love a team or they love a sport or whatever. And I've got like I'm a big racing fan, so I've got some like cars and racing stuff all around. And it just kind of makes it happy to look at. Like I look at my signed Graham Rahal diecast car. It's like, yeah. So that's what in my mind, that's what you should get from it. And if you're not getting that
absolutely.
from
Yeah,
it, you're doing it wrong.
absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. Well said. Well, Eric, that has come to the end of the chat. Um, Thank you so much for taking part. Really appreciate talking to you. Where can people find you on social media? What are your social media platforms?
You know what? So I've got a private Instagram. I actually had an art channel for really long time on Instagram that unfortunately got hacked, and it's still
Oh,
there because I can't get Instagram to take it down either. So if you're
Oh,
really
wow.
curious, look up Uncle Deluxe Art. But unfortunately, I can't actually even get into that Instagram anymore. So you can see some of my old stuff. I will at some point probably restart that.
Yeah.
But I'm not particularly present right now on a whole lot of social. My other Instagram is kind of private. If I don't really know you, I probably wouldn't accept a follow. But yeah, if you're interested in any of my artwork or anything, I Uncle Deluxe Art, but hey, it ain't me anymore. So
Oh, oh, gutting. Okay.
yeah.
Well, I won't put that link up then.
It's okay.
So yeah.
Uh-huh.
Wow. Okay. Well, like I said, Eric, this comes to the end of the chat. It has been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. It has been far too long. Understandable. You've been busy. You had other bits and bobs going on. You move and everything like that. So yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for taking part, mate. Really appreciate you taking the time out. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me on, Stu. It's we've been talking about it for a long time. It's nice to finally get a chance to sit and chat with you. This has been fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anyway, all I've got left to say is thank you all for watching. Really appreciate your support. Take care, stay safe, and we shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.
Take care.